Hey up everyone, and welcome back to the Rugby League History channel. Today on the channel I'll be doing my season review for Parramatta in 2025. So just a short introduction on myself. I've supported this club for over 30 years now. I run the Rugby League History YouTube channel, the Facebook page, the Instagram channel. I also run the Parramatta Eels RLFC page on Facebook, which has got about 4,000 members. I used to live in Australia and I was a paying member of the club at one stage. I've rode the highs and the lows of this club over the last 30 years, and every year since I've had this YouTube channel I do a season preview and a season review. At one stage when I first started the channel I used to do match reviews of every game, but it just got to a point where it's just, you know, being in England, it's so difficult to, with the time zones and all that, to actually review the game. So now I just stick to the preview and the review. But getting all that out of the road, I'm going to do my season review. I'm going to be talking about some of the big moments, the low moments, about the new head coach Jason Ryles, and some of the players we've brought in, some of the players we've farewelled. So stay tuned for the rest of the video. So to start off with this 2025 season review, last year was probably the hardest year for myself personally, being a Parramatta supporter. I went through every emotion you could possibly think of. It was a very tough year for me personally supporting the club, and I imagine a lot of yous out there, a lot of other Parramatta supporters, it would have been tough. But going into 2025 there was some optimism. Now in my season preview I think I predicted Parramatta to come about 12th or 13th. I definitely didn't think we were going to make the top 8, but I didn't see us coming last either. I saw us, you know, improving slightly. We brought in some players that were decent, and you know we'd come 12th or 13th. So we ended up coming in 11th place this year with new head coach Jason Ryles. We recorded 10 wins across the year. Our biggest home crowd for the year was against Canary Bankstown in round 3. We got 24,059 for that. The average home crowd for the year was 16,481, which is a bit down on previous years. Zach Lomax was a top point scorer with 143, and Josh Addo-Carr was the top try scorer with 19 tries. One of the biggest worries coming into 2025 was the fact that we'd been down this road before where we'd recruited a head coach from Melbourne, because there's this belief out there that if someone's been through the Eastern Suburbs pathways, through the Melbourne pathways, that automatically somehow they're going to be successful as a head coach. Sometimes that turns out to be true, but sometimes it doesn't turn out to be true. Most notably, we recruited Stephen Kearney from Melbourne, and he was probably one of the worst head coaches in Parramatta's history, and that's putting it lightly. So one of my biggest concerns going into this year was, please, I hope to God that Jason Ryles is not Stephen Kearney 2.0, because he'd done a long apprenticeship at Eastern Suburbs in Melbourne. There'd been a lot to talk about him, and I kind of went, well, hopefully what's been said about him is true. It's going to turn out to be true, because I don't want another Stephen Kearney 2.0. But to start off the year, in round 1 we played against Melbourne down there in Melbourne, and we got off to the fucking worst possible start, losing 56 points to 18. So we all know the 50-point rule. We all know what that means in terms of NRL and Rugby League. And after round 1, basically our chances of winning the Premiership, even though they were probably like that, were officially done for 2025 after fucking round 1. And I will say that at the start of the year, it was tough. And I was thinking to myself, look, we were bad in 2024, but at the moment, these first few rounds, we're fucking worse. We were terrible. We were dreadful. And there was a lot of people in the comment section, I remember some of their names still now, saying stuff like, Ryles has to go, he's another Stephen Kearney 2.0, the players are shite, it's going to be a long season, all this caper. And we ended up losing our opening 5 matches of the year. We were dead last on the table. And it wasn't, well, sorry, we lost our first 4 matches of the year. We were dead last on the table. And then we finally got our first win of the year against St George in Golden Point extra time, 23-22. But that first half of the year, up until round 11, we'd only won 3 games, and we were sat last on the table. We were at the bottom of the table. We'd beaten West Tigers, we'd beaten St George, and we'd beaten Newcastle, which, when you look at how the season ended for them clubs, it wasn't really much to write home about, really. Our form in that first half of the year were dreadful. But one of the promising signs that I saw were in round 12. We played against Manly. We were down a couple of players, most notably Mitchell Moses, and we won that game 30 points to 10. And I think that was, in some ways, I think, especially for the playing group, that was a bit of a turning point for the season, because I think that win gave a lot of the players, especially the ones that hadn't played too much first grade, a bit of belief and a bit of confidence to say, like, we belong here. We belong in first grade. We can do this as a squad. We just have to stick at it and we can get better. And then after that, I noticed that even though we were losing games, there was improvement within the squad, and you could see that they were slowly getting there. They were getting close to a winner, or they were getting an idea of how to win a game, because, as I mentioned, the squad was quite young, as it has been this year. A lot of new recruits, a lot of new systems, and we had very narrow losses against Penrith. We were in that match against Canterbury for, I'd say, about 60 minutes there. That game against St George, we blew that one. If it weren't for Addo-Carr putting his foot on the line, I think we win that game. We storm back and win that. Then we had another game against Penrith where we were in that game for a bit, but then just the class of Penrith just got away from us in the end. And then I think the second turning point of the year happened in round 21, where we were in a precarious position, because at that stage we were, I think, only 2 points away from the wooden spoon zone. And although the Gold Coast were there and Souths were there and Newcastle were kind of thereabouts as well, I was still a bit worried, and I kind of went, we have to, even though the results are improving on the pitch, we're still coming up with the losses. So we have to get a couple of wins here, otherwise we could find ourselves last. But in round 21, we had a 22 points to 20 win over Brisbane at Suncorp Stadium. And as we all know now, Brisbane in the preliminary final and are one match away from the grand final. So that was a huge win against them. Then the following week, we had a narrow loss against Melbourne, 16 points to 10. And I did a video on TikTok and Instagram where I was just venting my frustrations, because I went, even though we're improving sort of on the pitch, the results are exactly the fucking same. Like, we're still losing. Last year we were 15th. This year we're 15th. And at the end of the day, the wooden spoon doesn't care about if you're trying hard or improving. A loss is a loss, and we need some fucking wins. And that's what I said. And obviously half the fan base were with me. The other half of the fan base was saying, oh, you're a fucking idiot, fuck you. So it was a very divisive video, but at the time I was very vocal. I was fuming, you know what I mean? Because I've said it before, even with when Brad Arthur were in charge, Parramatta's been a club like this for the last couple of years, where we put in some good performances and everyone goes, wow, where did this come from? And then the next week we turn out a shite performance and we lose, and you kind of go, like, what the fuck? What's going on? This up and down behaviour. We need consistency. But to close out the year, I think that match against Brisbane where we won was a turning point as a squad, because in that back, I'd say probably that last 6 or 7 weeks, and a lot of people would probably agree with me, Parramatta was one of the form teams of the competition. How they were playing on the pitch, and how the players were gelling, and how the coach was implementing things and like that. I think that last 6 or 7 week period were the best part of the year to be a Parramatta supporter, because we had that win over North Queensland, Golden Point extra time in round 23, which virtually assured that we were safe from the wooden spoon. And then we had 3 strong wins to close out the year. We beat Eastern Suburbs quite convincingly. New Zealand away in Auckland, beat them. Another good display. And then we saved the best to last. 66 points to 10 over Newcastle. Got revenge for 2001. Handed them the wooden spoon. And also recorded one of the biggest crowds of the year as well. Just under 24,000 there at the new Western Sydney Stadium. So looking at this season, it started off with a lot of doom and gloom, but it ended on a very positive note. Now I'm just going to touch on the recruitment for the players that we brought in this year. I think the recruitment this year was pretty much bang on. I think the recruitment over the last couple of years has been a bit hit and miss. There's been a couple of weird signings that shouldn't have been made, but I think this year the recruitment team got it bang on, because I'm going to go through some of the players that we've brought in this year. So Josh Addo-Carr, absolute no-brainer. Top try scorer this year for the club, 19 tries. Very energetic off the pitch with his training and how he is with the players. He's good to have around, you know, as a morale boost and stuff like that. Obviously, he brings a lot of experience. Yes, he does inherit the stain of playing for Melbourne and Canterbury. And sometimes I kind of look at him and go, oh, he fucking played for them. But I just have to put that past me and think about the bigger picture. But I think overall, fantastic signing. Dean Hawkins did his job when he was asked to do his job. I'm pretty sure when he signed that contract, he knew that Mitchell Moses was going to be number one and he was going to play second fiddle. But when he was called upon, played, I'd say, pretty well. Isaiah Yongi, a great signing from Penrith. Well done for the club, scouting him. Obviously, sometimes I miss Gutherson, but there were some things that Iongi did this year on the pitch where I kind of went, Gutherson wouldn't be able to do that anymore. Like, there was that try that he scored against New Zealand where he just totally burned everyone. And he just run past Charles Nickel-Klugstadt like he weren't there. And I went, if Gutherson were there, he wouldn't be able to do that. He doesn't have the pace anymore. But Iongi, super quick. He's got some work to do, polish his game, but I think a great signing overall. Kidione Katoga, very underrated signing. Not like nobody wanted him. Canterbury Bankstown, West Tigers didn't want him. We picked him up. Zach Lomax, you know, he had his moments this year, but I think overall a very good signing. Brings another option for goal kicking, another attacking option. His partnership with Mitchell Moses is something that I'll touch on a little bit later when I talk about Moses, but I think overall good signing. Jordan Samrani, another good signing, someone that wasn't given a go at a few clubs that he was at before, especially Canterbury, and we've picked him up and he's turned out to be an alright player. You got Riley Smith, he's another good pickup where obviously Penrith didn't have room for him and we've come in and signed him. And with Dylan Walker, a mid-season signing. Personally, as a person, I don't like Dylan Walker for what he's done off the pitch, but solely for what he brings to the team with his experience. He's played 250 first grade games, premiership winner, been around for a long time, very versatile. You can play him in a number of different positions. I think he fit into the squad quite well. And Jack Williams, Ken Thornton medal winner this year, player of the season, and his first year at the club. I thought Jack Williams was a very good player this year for Parramatta, a toiler. And also we brought in another mid-season signing as well, Talon De Silva from West Tigers, who by all accounts West Tigers supporters were very upset when he decided to leave because he didn't want to play second fiddle to Apasai Coruscant. So very good signing there. I think in the long run he'll prove out to be a very good player. But next I'm going to be talking about Jason Ryles. So with Jason Ryles, as I said, his first year as a head coach, I was concerned that he was going to be a Stephen Kearney 2.0. All them fears are erased. I think Parramatta in the long run have a really good head coach here in the making with Jason Ryles. One thing I've noticed about Jason Ryles is he's not afraid to make the big calls. Because before the season even began, this was back in November last year, he'd only been in the joint for 5 minutes and he goes up to Gutherson, the club legend, captain of the squad, over 200 first grade games with Parramatta, taps him on the shoulder and says, look, Clint, I want you in my team next year, but you're not going to be fullback. Iongi's going to be fullback and I'll put you somewhere else, but Iongi's going to be fullback. And Clint Gutherson turned around and said, I don't want to play second fiddle, I want to be fullback, I want this. And Ryles said, okay then, you're free to leave. He'd only been there for 5 minutes basically in the grand scale of things. He did the same thing to Regan Campbell-Gillard. Regan Campbell-Gillard, he moved him on, which turned out to be a good thing. With the Gutherson thing, I still think that we could have used Gutherson this year. His experience, what he brings to the squad and stuff like that. Obviously, he won Player of the Year at St George this year, and he had some good matches for St George here or there, so we could have used him. But one thing that Ryles did is he went in there and he's put the broom through the place pretty much. He's got shot of all the old guard, all of Arthur's old guard. So Cartwright got the tap on the shoulder. Joey Lussick got the tap on the shoulder. I'm pretty sure if Sean Lane were fit and ready to play, he would have been tapped on the shoulder and told, sorry, you're not needed anymore. He sent Ryan Mattison out on loan to Warrington. He sent Brendan Hands out on loan to Toulouse Olympique. And he's got shot of some of the other deadwood at the club, like Joe Offengawi. I never really rated Joe Offengawi, got shot of him, he went to Lee. And then some of the other players that he's tapped on the shoulder, like your Hayes Dunster, which it's not his fault, he was injured, but he had to go. Dan Kerr, Wiremu Greg. And then probably obviously the biggest one of all is Dylan Brown after round one, after we lost against Melbourne by 50 points. He signs a 10-year deal or whatever it was, worth 13 million Australian dollars to go to Newcastle. And halfway through the year, Jason Ryles taps Dylan Brown on the shoulder and says, look, I'm going to think about the future here. Like, you're not going to be here. I'm going to put Joash Papali'i in, who's a player that I forgot to mention before, but Joash Papali'i is another player that's done really well in his debut season. But he's tapped him on the shoulder and said, I don't want you in the squad, or you're not going to be 5'8" now. I got Joash Papali'i in there. We're going to try new things. And I think if Brad Arthur was still head coach, he wouldn't have done that. He would have kept Dylan Brown in there for the entire year. But that's just my personal opinion. But I think the way that Jason Ryles has got the squad to play, got them to gel, the players that they're bringing in, his attitude towards everything, I think that Parramatta's got a good future under Jason Ryles. And one of the elephants in the room that I haven't mentioned yet is Mitchell Moses. Once again, he's our club captain and he didn't play for much of the year. He were injured. I was hoping before the start of this season, I'm thinking, please don't get picked for State of Origin. Please don't get picked for State of Origin. And he got picked for State of Origin and I went, fuck. And then he got injured again. And I'm thinking, oh, for fuck's sake, because I've been watching rugby league for a long time and I've never seen a club rely so heavily on one player in recent times, because it seems like when Moses is in the squad, we're a top 8 side easy. When he's not there, the wheels fall off. But I've noticed this year that there's been a couple of times where Moses weren't there, where the players did step up, notably that match against Manly. But I think a lot of people have said online, if Moses was fit for the entire year, Parramatta would probably potentially play finals this year, because Moses is a good player. I think he's getting better year after year that he's in the NRL. I think every year he's growing as a player, he's getting better. I think we just need luck on our side. We need to wrap him up in cotton wool. We need to do something, because I think if we can keep Mitchell Moses fit next year and we can get a full season out of him, the sky's the limit. I'm not saying we're going to be premiership contenders, but I think having a fit Moses is the best thing that Parramatta can have. And his relationship with Zach Lomax as well, especially we've seen at State of Origin level, they've almost got like a telepathic bond there, especially when Moses kicks to Lomax. And we didn't get to see much of what the media calls Momax. We didn't get to see much of that this year, because either Lomax was out injured or Moses was out injured, so we didn't get the two of them together at the same time. But I think with Mitchell Moses going forward, it's key that he stays injury free, because although I think Hawkins is a good replacement, he's no Moses. So I think, you know, hopefully in 2026 Moses stays healthy. And I think next year as well, when it comes to the off-season recruitment, the club's got a mini war chest there, because Dylan Brown's left the club for insane money. I don't know what the fuck Newcastle were thinking we're going to sign this player for 10 years on 13 million quid or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, Dylan Brown never stepped up in a big match for Parramatta ever. He never stepped up in a finals game. At times he looked like he didn't want to be there, especially before the season began. He just seemed like he was kind of coasting through, cruising through, didn't really give a fuck, cared more about his hair. Like sometimes I'd see him, we'd have a heavy loss and he'd be going, how you going? Oh, it's good to see you again. Oh, you're smiling. I'm thinking, fuck off. You know what I mean? We got battered by 40 or 50 points and you see Dylan Brown smiling there. So in my own personal opinion, I'm glad to see the back of Dylan Brown. I mean, he had a lot of promise coming through the juniors, but to me, yeah, hope will have fun, Newcastle fans, because you've got a 5'8" who runs occasionally, doesn't kick the ball, cares more about his hands, never stepped up in a big game before. So have fun with that in 2026 Newcastle. But with this club, they've got a mini war chest, as I said. They've got all that money that Dylan Brown was taken up in the cap, and some of these other players, Sean Lane, Bryce Cartwright, and they can invest it in the right positions. I personally think that the club needs another strike centre, maybe one or two more front rowers. But I mean, obviously that's up to the recruitment team to ultimately decide what the club needs. But I'm pretty sure the fans will be posted on social media and they'll be given their viewpoints of what's needed. But I just think with Parramatta going into 2026, there's exciting times ahead for the club. So looking at the highlights and lowlights of the year, I'll start with the lowlights. Obviously, round one, losing to the Scum, 56 points to 18. And, you know, basically having because of the 50-point rule, your season's over pretty much in terms of winning the Premiership. That were pretty fucked. Also losing to Canberra 50 points to 12, that weren't fun. And then losing them again 40 points to 16 in round 20, that weren't a good day out for the club. But looking at some of the highlights now for the season, I think the best win that we had all year on the basis of everything was probably the Brisbane match in round 21. That were a really solid effort from the lads. I also think that win over Manly in round 12, 30 points to 10, where we had no Moses and Parkins stepped up, had 4 try assists that were big. And obviously round 27, getting the revenge for 2001, handing Newcastle that wooden spoon, 66 points to 10. They were a field day out there, and it were really good to see that the club finished on a positive note. So going into 2026, where do I see the club finishing at the moment? It's too early to say because there's a long time, there's recruitment in the off-season, things can happen. But I think going forward, Jason Ryles has, and behind the scenes has been set up for the club to, I think, have some good seasons ahead and hopefully some long-term success. Obviously, the new training facility out there, Centre of Excellence out at Kellyville, has been built. So that'll be good for the club. And also the New South Wales Cup side, the reserve grade side, did well this year. They made the preliminary final against New Zealand and they got one win away from the grand final. So New South Wales Cup side did really well. Also, the under-20s did really well. They made the final series in their league. And the club recorded 37,000 paying members this year as well, which I think is the most out of any Sydney club. And you compare that to, you look at the likes of Penrith and stuff like that, they're just barely scraping over 20,000 members and we've got 37,000 members. So next year, it's going to be 40 years since the club last lifted the trophy. We've currently got the third longest premiership drought in New South Wales Rugby League / NRL history. Do I see the drought ending next year? Probably not, but we'll just have to wait and see. So anyways, that's been my 2025 Parramatta season review. I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, I'm going to put timestamps in this video. If you want to skip ahead at any point or go back, you can. But anyways, this has been Rugby League history, and I will catch you all later in the next video. Alright, tatty bye for now.